So everyone ready? The role of the ballot is to effectively combat sexism in the debate community. This is an argument that shouldn't need justification, but here goes. First, my narrative. At the Big Lex tournament, I found myself not feeling like debating in the middle of the round. I was tired of the talk, and I felt like I had more important things to say. Instead of reading my talk a little private, I decided to read a story instead about a princess and a frog and comment on the problems I saw in the debate meeting. I told my opponent, the judge, about my experience about being sexually harassed at the debate game, and after that, I knew that I wasn't going to turn back to the topic when I realized that there's more to be done in debate. A few weeks later, I read a performance of sexual harassment in debate and reached finals at Columbia. The amount of feedback I received from the community was enormous. People posted their thoughts on a popular LD website, one discussion inspired another discussion inspired another. Several girls reached out to me via email, telling me that I'm afraid that they could relate to my experience, that I had received a lot of support and criticism. The community gathered together, wrote more articles, engaged in more discussions, and even started a pledge. I think that the pledge is really great. I'm all about it, but there's a point at which putting your name on something isn't going to solve everything. Even Rebecca said today that the pledge can't do anything by itself until we make the first move, recognize the problem, and committing ourselves to fixing it. Nothing's ever going to change. I think that stuff's moving into the debate round. If there are so many debaters who say that sexism is important, why am I the only one talking about it in debate round? After round 6, Sarah Sanchez told me that she values top debate and normally wouldn't vote on micropolitical arguments, but that she believes that my arguments have a lot of impacts, and I hope you agree. 2. Culture of silence. Credibility of speaking from the community comes first. We decide to mobilize. The only way to progress is bridge the difference between this ballot community, the power to speak, Lord of separate rights. I couldn't believe that what is most important to me must be spoken and made verbal, and should even at the risk of having bruised or misunderstood. The transformation of silence into action, the acts of self-revelation that always seems fraught with danger, that we are here and that I speak is an attempt to break the silence and break some of the differences between us, but it's not difference which mobilizes us, but silence. There are so many silences to be broken. Next, not only does silence mean that we remain anonymous and invisible, it also encourages sexual harassment and abuse that occur in the future. Also 97 writes, the silence of the entire community enables inappropriate behavior because silence is a necessary condition for the behavior. Such silence, sadly, by those around perpetrated enables the harassment to continue. It is appropriate to recognize the enabling silence of the entire community as an enabling behavior. And anyone with you that would say that sexual harassment is bad, it treats people as means and only produces harm and suffering. There's no moral justification for this behavior. Third, critiques first. Critiques the context of debating on topical debates and debate practice come logically prior to having something that are theoretical arguments. These are functionally comparable arguments about real effects of speech acts and Connor Board Murphy, right? Most of the game matter regardless of the truth of quality of resolution, the status of the impossibly valued, nobody critiques in comparison to other arguments. How could a judge weigh a sex language critique against nuclear warsaw by hypothetical policy? The sequential nature of the critique requires the context to be evaluated first. Only the context judge, to be fair, should debate evaluation and proceed to the resolution. And an equal respect environment is a gateway issue necessary for any debate to occur. Ulrich 86 writes, the forensics educator has an obligation to provide equal respect to all participants and systematically exclude classes of individuals fails to address problem fairness in favor of one class based on relevant factors fails to promote the educational benefits of the activity. Sexual harassment, discrimination, and even more subtle virtues are unethical in that they limit the availability of the activity. Or fairy tale logic. Remember, voting for or against the resolution doesn't do anything. Voting for the resolution thinking that something will change is the equivalent of kissing a frog with the expectation that it will turn into a handsome prince. This isn't a fairy tale, this is the real life. I'm speaking truth and affecting real people. You as a judge have the opportunity to vote for either real life rehabilitation or fairy tale rehabilitation. Part 2 is the debate around solvency, or why I can combat sexism. First, silence in debate rounds. My framework explains that silence needs to be broken wherever it's present. To my knowledge, I've been the only debater this year combating sexism from within debate itself. Talking about the topic is a mode of exclusion that says that this issue is important. York 93 writes, the increasing impact arguments by debating coaches signals a more detached fascinating perception of one that means that these real human tragedies as part of game, which advocates actively seek to find the impact that outweighs all other impacts. It's important for us to recognize to examine debate practices and imperative that we critically examine our own discourse practices within that to how our language does violence to others. I'm tired of how we're debating marginalized rhetoric voices in such a discourse community. Women who verbally assault their opponents are labeled bitches because it's not socially acceptable for women to be verbally aggressive. Women who get angry and storm out of room when disappointing decisions rendered are labeled hysterical because we all know that women are more emotional than men. I find myself wondering how many more women gave up because they were tired of negotiating the minefield of discrimination, sexual harassment, and isolation they found in the debate community. We may not be able to change the world, but we can change our own community. If we fail to do so, we may give up the only power that we have. Vote to move this discussion deeper to tournament it had the biggest impact in bringing sense. 2. Awareness and recognition. There's a certain way in which I've come to represent the position. I'm dedicating my debate career this semester. How far I can go on this issue. If I fail, my persuasive debaters in the future from running these arguments and be detriment to change a vote for me is a signal that the debate community can and should progress. My loss, like this before, symbolizes that the movement again has died and the community's persistence changed. I'll continue to run this case in the next time. This is the biggest success voting for them because my training career is almost over. I can bring more and more awareness. And here's the proof that I've done this in the past. In the case, there's a high probability that I can do it in the future. 3. Power. Debaters are constantly fighting for recognition. The ballot is a tool of reward, punishment, ultimately power. Ballots is the currency of visibility in the contemporary debate culture. And in order to speak, I have to become visible as an individual. The name of the ballot is voice, visibility, endorsement by authority, and backed by normative force. The judge is in a position of privilege by virtue of being the judge of all because most judges happen to be white males. They decide who is explaining to the judge to be reproduced. When the judge sets the ballot for the debate, they're giving them power. They're giving them a voice, a home. They're experience are key. The debate right as communication acts each recognize narratives with valid form of evidence on discussion about the issue, but especially for expressing marginalized voices. Goodmark 08 writes, narratives enable a woman to see that she's not responsible for the violence held against her, can be essential tool in helping her to hold on to her sense of self. Narratives are essential in creating a basis for self-knowledge by helping individuals to understand and organize their worlds beyond the individual. And narratives are also a building block for developing the interpersonal relationships bonds develop when the stories we share resonate with others. So firm.
App says that we have to perpetuate this message. What's the message? What are we talking about? Start the discussion now.
Sexism is bad, and
What are we going to do?
Sorry, what?
What are we going to do about it?
We need to change people's mindsets about like.
I understand sexism is bad. We have to change people's mindsets. Let's move on from that point. Let's have that discussion. What do you want to do? I outlined some policies in my speech at the NDCA Awards Assembly. What do you think of those?
Those are all good.
So,
like I'm all for them, of course.
So I'm going to work on implementing them. Do you have anything else to contribute to discussion?
I think that, well, first, I think it's really important that, I have a lot of these outlined in the case that I read at Harvard. I think that at camps, they should try to maintain as many co-ed lab leaders as possible. They should have an on-site specialist who deals with these forms of abuse.
Jessica, why isn't any of this in the app?
Because I'm trying to change. I'm trying to take small steps and change debate from within, so that will lead to bigger steps outside.
Change. What's the message? What are you telling people?
That sexism is bad, and that we need to change the mentality. Debate.
We recognize sexism is bad.
Right.
What's the answer?
Not everybody does, though. That's the thing, right? Because that's what I've been fighting this entire time. Everyone recognizes sexism is bad until we get to the debate round, right? You are a huge proponent of solving sexism against women, just not in the round.
I'm a huge proponent of fighting sexism outside of the debate round.
Yes.
Why do I have to lose this round, given that outside the debate, everything I do is dedicated to perpetuate, pushing debaters against sexism's cause?
Yeah, no, I completely understand, and I am trying to do all those things too. But the point is that in-round discourse is more important. It gives us the fastest link to solving these problems, right?
So your impacts seem to be talking about silence. Given that what I am doing outside of debate rounds seems to solve that for silence, why do I lose?
How does what you're doing outside debate rounds solve for silence?
Debaters Against Sexism's agenda, me meeting with Scott.
Right, so how do they solve for silence,
legislative agenda to fight back sexism?
How does that solve for silence?
We are trying to fix sexism outside of the debate, in the debate community, through legislation.
Right, so that's sexism. What about silence?
Alright, I have another question. Jessica, I emailed you earlier before this tournament, on the day that you didn't get your at-large, I said that we're pushing a lot of agenda. I'd really like it if you gave me some ideas or communicated with me. You haven't said anything to me. Why is that?
Because I'm trying to work on the in-round discourse first. The point, okay, listen, I never said that if you voted for me, I would have waved my magic wand and solved it completely. I'm saying that, in-round discourse is the way to start. The first thing is to change people's mentalities on these issues, right? If I keep winning rounds, people are going to understand that this is a really serious issue.
About the last debate I saw you said that when you win, your face gets put on NSD update.
Yeah, that's obviously, okay, I got nervous during class. I don't think anyone thinks that that's the term
Why are
impact
NSD flame wars good?
Yes, because they spur discussion.
Flame wars?
Well, what do you mean?
I'm sorry. You get more flame wars?
No,
I heard you make this
what do you mean by
earlier.
a flame war?
I'm asking what good comes from a flame war.
I don't know what you mean by a flame war. The discussion we had on NDCA update was good as far as I know.
Okay, no problem. I'll flash it to you. It's just going to be a one-off. Let me see. I'll send those. Actually, it'll sort of be two off. You can either throw the second off as an overview to the app or on the second paper.
Are these in order?
Yes.
You said two offs for the second off on the app?
Yeah, that's an overview. Ready? Because crimes establish a relationship of dominance over the victim that retribution is necessary to reverse and negate. Crime puts the defender at a relation of dominance and retribution annuls the offender's claim mastery over the victim or reaffirms the victim's rights. Farnham 08. The victim is directly affected by the action. He thinks she now stands in special relation to the wrongdoer. The defender has his rights to view that his very victim is to be regarded as lesser directness in the act against the victim entails the disregard of both the victim's status as one class of right and objective character of the wrongdoer and is intersubject to state affairs in our social world. If a man rapes a woman, this act expresses the idea that the wrongdoer is superior to the victim and you can victim to his own ends of punishment for crime so as to lower the wrongdoer and reestablish public relation between him and the victim. And wrongdoing is an elevation of one person or another that constitutes subjugation. And enforcing victims' rights are especially important in a world of sexual assault and racially motivated attacks. Prosecution of hate crimes is critical to combating oppressive hierarchies. Tassels 99. Hate crimes send messages to the great entire group groups. Not only individual respect is demonstrated through symbolic activity by officially promoting transgression in way these norms, criminal convictions can profiling influence racial status, hate crimes, legislation help to dismantle status hierarchy. Surveys reveal that nearly 1/2 of men, all men admit they would commit rape if they thought that they could get away with it. Rape culture consists of a climate that fosters subordination of the female social status, feelings, and other groups. The lower values become more shared and more intense, the greater becomes that risk that others sharing those values will act on them to cause harm. Overview to the app. In the debate community, some people have committed severe crimes, sexual harassment and assault crimes. Cyberbullying is a crime. These individuals need to be punished or brought to justice, which is why retribution should be valued over rehabilitation. I'm going to tell you my story now. In February, I had the idea to start a pledge. Jessica's position launched some discussion largely on NDCA update, but I noticed these discussions were A point not resulting in any concrete change, and B point quickly devolving into flame wars where people were more interested in launching ad hominem attacks against Jessica instead of looking for ways to fight sexism. So people began to become detracted from the conversation because they were disgusted. Mike B told me to create a sexist website to host the pledge online. Within the week, we had over 1,000 signatures. It didn't end there. Debaters Against Sexism gained traction. The National Forensics League is publishing an article I wrote in the next edition of the newsletter. UNT and VPN debaters are working with DAS this summer to host women debate workshops. The NDCA backs my movement. The TOC committee is going to back my movement. Scott One, who's the executive director of the National Forensics League, told me during his speech during awards that in private that he plans on working with me to pass legislation to combat sexism in the next NFL board meeting. This isn't just me bragging or ranting about my story. I'm doing everything I can to fight sexism out of the ground. Debaters Against Sexism has impacted people. There's still a lot I have to do, and I plan on doing it. But in this debate round, I want to talk about the topic. Here's why topical debate is good. I do not link to her critique of silence. I'm telling you that Jessica's arguments belong in the debate. I'm also telling you that she needs to discuss the topic. My counter-advocacy is also 100% their office. We can use topical debate as a way to break down assumptions debaters have offered debate. We can make topical debate better. We can make each individual route count for something. Triples of Harvard, my junior year, a debater from university told me that since victims of domestic violence went through such psychological trauma, they were effectively non-person. They had no free will. I went for a pre-field argument at Twin R, but why that sort of logic is absolutely repugnant. I lost. I became completely disillusioned with that debate, but instead of choosing Jessica's methodology, I decided to fight people on their own terms. I decided to debate the topic of doubles of last year's TUC. A debater from Dulles told me that morality is always in its flag, so even repugnant things like rape were morally permissible. I disagreed and I won. In finals of the Harvard round robin debate from St. Louis Park said that impacts back to sentimentalism mattered more than impacts back to racism. I disagreed and I won. In Optics of TFA State, a debater from Straight Jesuit told me that morality is subjective, so we can't have absolute moral claims that gender violence didn't matter. I disagreed and I won. I have been reading an ask about race for the entirety of the topic. I've been challenging colorblind assumption that many debating judges don't even know that they have. Every time someone tries to impact on my argument, tries to say my argument doesn't matter, it's an opportunity for me to fight back against the community to prove why their prejudices need to go away, which turns from Lord evidence about science. I break science every time I debate, and that's also better because connecting our personal advocacy to the public sphere widens our perspective and makes it better on societal level. Jarreau 06. Any discourse about the future has to give an issue of youth because young people embody the commitment to society's obligation to the future. The youth affirms the social relations and violence to the public good is particularly important for public and higher education to define the highest ideals of recognition that how they educate youth is connected to the climate is important public spheres, and these advocacies are crucial because material change to the public institutions is not enough for us to debate sexism, to discuss sexism inside debates. This is such a myopic discussion. We need to become engaged citizens to address wider societal problems. Topic with a unique training ground. Schneider and Schur 06. Advocacy is vital because active engagement is extremely important. Young people need to learn how to adapt to what they care about. The current laws of Democrat advocates coupled with the general public increasing loss of faith in public institutions. Democratic process is solved by teaching students to become active advocates. Debate is valuable because it provides a counter-traditional consumer mentality of education. Jessica will say that her individual experience will not fit into the debate round, but that is not true. The NC is empirical disproof of that. Some of the individuals accused of sexism have engaged in criminal activity. Sexual assault is a crime. Online bullying is a crime. We should have a topical discussion about whether or not that merits rehabilitation or retribution. Her end goal is for women to be accepted in activity, but we're just recycling cards. We're not talking about anything. Why do we want to be here? Why should even women even stay if it's not teaching anything? My advocacy is the only thing that makes topical debate better. Now go to part 2. Her model makes it impossible for us to be in solidarity with each other. Using the competitive debate format to generate change does not create the necessary coalition, just making the losing team scapegoats for the community's problems. Atchison, Panetta, 09 were team losing because the judge decided it's better for the community for the other team to win. To be sacrificed to petition the opposite to change, creating change who wins. Japanese backlash discussion results from this hostile situation is not a productive one of participants to work together for a common goal. Mark the card there, but my unique social and political situation makes this a damning dissent because when you vote for me, you harm my movement. You delegitimize my career. Instead of wanting all women to see this methodology that she has chosen forces you to pick one of us over the other. In her world, there's never a perm. In her world, there's always a Trump. This hers debated into the oppression Olympics. Forcing the judge to choose between us makes it you ask the question, who's suffering more? Who's fighting sexism better? We should not be debating who's doing more. Forced choice means that no matter what the judge does, it delegitimizes one of our movements. She is either or. I am and. This is an advantage to my counter-advocacy because when we come together and we debate the topic, there's no forced choice between our movements and two people beating on the terms that they wanted all along. Second dissent is the intersectionality dissent. Sexism is pretty bad in debate, but we are still uniquely privileged. Jessica's position ignores poor colored women, ignores incarcerated women, ignoring the women who are shackled to the bed while giving birth in prison, who are denied visiting rights, who are losing their children to foster care. Society has deemed the unfit mother. She's ignoring young black Latino women, stereotypes and no good sluts because who only perpetuate poverty but just haven't baked it. You can't talk about sexism in a vacuum. We have to consider patriarchy silencing dissent. If she's not talking about the topic, she is silencing herself. No one has engaged her position. Every debate she's had has been about whether her position should even be allowed. It's very clear in context. She doesn't even have a real position. She's just pointing out that sexism is really bad, but she's not advocating any concrete change to solve that. So we're not really debating an option. We're all just agreeing that there's a problem in the community, but we're not taking steps to fix it. 80% of her ad has been justified. Why should she be allowed to speak in the first place? There may be 1 or 2 mentions of the actual problems we have to fix. There's form, but there isn't content. Jessica does not have a message. Only my counter-advocacy of promoting these discussions within topical debate allows debaters to have the benefits of pre-round preparation so we can have in-depth discussion, makes it better advocacy. We have to account to every single objection to our advocacies. It's very simple. Jessica's story matter. Her points matter. But that just means that we should discuss those within the topical context in order to make debate better instead of perpetuating an uneducational activity.
Ready?
Yeah.
So you're talking about how if we do topical debate, then we're going to be gaining the advocacy skills that are going to help us solve these issues in real life, right?
We can talk about the issues that you bring up in your app through topical debate. I've been doing that throughout the entire year.
Okay, so say I talk about sexual harassment within the criminal justice system, whether it should be rehabilitated or retributed, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the impact of doing that?
So here's a good example. In finals of the Harvard round robin, Richard Schmickler from St. Louis Park said that impacts back to sentimentalism matter more than impacts back to racism. I made a color blindness argument about why that ethical argumentation was dripping with white privilege, and 2 of the judges voted for me. That is a way in which I changed the community's perspectives of their argumentation and how we're approaching issues in debate.
So you changed the perspective of 2 judges by making that argument. I'm asking, what are the real world impacts? Has racism been solved as a result of that? Or has the fight against racism progressed? Where are the real world discursive solvency impacts?
I'd say that I made Mara Chernick, Ryan Davis, and Tara Norris all think more critically about how race plays into debate, and also say that your advocacy is not a lot much better, because in addition to just telling everyone that sexism is a problem, you don't even have a real advocacy. You're not telling us what we should debate about. There's no consideration for me to...
Why don't I have a real advocacy?
Your advocacy is just that sexism is bad. Where's the debate? Where's the discussion? You should be...
Wait, so my advocacy sexism is bad? Is that all you got from my case?
You say that you should win so you can promote more discussion, tell more people that sexism is bad.
Right, so I'm breaking the silence in debate, right? That is an advocacy, isn't it?
I break silence every time I debate. I tell debaters that racism is bad and their dumb SCEF arguments shouldn't matter. I tell debaters that rape is bad and their dumb moral permissibility arguments shouldn't matter. I've been doing that through the entire year, and I think I've influenced a lot of people. That is a way in which we can cause change. We can change people's opinions through debate. And we
that's
can also
really great.
More effective advocacy.
No, I'm honestly really glad that you do those things. I'm just trying to figure out how that is better than my advocacy.
Sure, we can go through the multiple dissents on case. The first one is the chosen one dissent. Your methodology makes it impossible for us to be in solidarity with each other because one of us becomes a scapegoat. One of us has to lose. They have to choose my movement over yours or your movement over mine, but we're both movements for the same cause, so this debate should not be about who's doing more, but rather who's debating the resolution more, because those are the terms that we want to be accepted on in the first place.
What's the second one say?
Intersectionality. Sexism is pretty bad in debate, but we're still uniquely privileged because we can still come to this tournament without worrying about our physical safety. But you're also not talking about women who are shackled to their beds in prisons while they're giving birth.
Wait, so why are you holding me accountable for women in prison?
I'm not holding you accountable for that. I say you have to discuss them. And your methodology...
Why do I have to discuss them? What's the impact of discussing women in prison that are shackled because they're pregnant?
Because we can't just talk about sexism that affects privileged debaters. We have to talk about sexism in the community. Only my...
So you're choosing the topics that I talk about?
What?
You're choosing the topics that I should talk about.
No, we should debate the resolution. We can debate sexism through debating the resolution. That's an example of how.
Okay. How many minutes prep?
5.
Okay. Is everyone ready? The whole topic of Rebecca's case talks about how we have to respect victims, and I'm wondering why my rights aren't being respected. I am a victim of sexual harassment. I made that very open to everyone, but I'm being told that I can't talk about it in my rounds because that's bad for whatever reason that she gave. So let's talk about how Rebecca is a huge proponent of fighting against sexism outside of rounds. right? So she tells a story about how she went on NSC update and she saw the flameware that I produced as a result of my performance in Colombia, and she realized, well, first, no actual change is happening, and second, this is just leading to a flame war, which she never defined, so I'm not really sure what that even means. But I just want everyone to know that I inspired this actual real-world change. Everyone has to understand that my in-round discourse is what led to the out-of-round change. So that means that that my in-round discourse is going to further produce out-of-round change, because it has to start from within the system. Next, she talks about how she's done a lot of readings against sexism. I just want to take the time to say, I think everything that Rebecca does is really great, and that that she's amazing for doing all those things. So thank you, Rebecca, for fighting for women. And next, let's talk about the topic of the day. So she says that she's not silencing me by telling me that I have to read about sexual harassment in the confines of the topic, that I have to go write a moral framework, do research on the criminal justice system when I don't really care about it, and talk about sexism of other people's cases of sexism within the debate meeting. That is obviously silencing. Cross-applied the ultimate evidence talks about how this kind of mentality, silencing people, not letting people say what they want in debate rounds, is the exact mentality of what leads to sexual harassment and future sexual abuse to occur. And she says that she gives several examples about how she disagrees with people in real life, in debate rounds, and that's causing change in real life. I'd say that I'm outweighing that number of people that I'm causing change with. As you can see in this room, there's at least 25 people here. People are watching my rounds because they know that my in-round discourse is important. And next, let's talk about how judges are going to have to choose between whether or not they want to advance the community of the debate practice, or vote for the person who deserves to win on the flow. I just want to say this is completely empirically denied. If anything, judges are more likely to intervene against me. Count how many judges' paradigms you've read that said I'm a micropol hack, right? 0. I haven't seen anyone write that. And also, judges are very likely to vote on flow. I can say at this tournament, I've never had any judge intervene for me, maybe against me, but all the judges are very likely to vote on the flow, so this is empirically denied. And group all the arguments about advocacy skills, I'm outweighing on time frame and predictability. I'm the fastest link to actually solving these problems, right? I became an advocate inside the round. My in-round discourse leads to the impacts that Rebecca's talking about, so I'm the fastest link to actually solving these problems. If we wait until we all develop the advocacy skills to go out into the real world and fight these issues, that's going to take way too long. There are going to be more victims of sexual harassment, and that is a good thing. So, let's talk about the app now. So the role of the ballot is to effectively combat sexism in the debate community. And she's conceded that sexism is one of, or the most important issue, right? So the first justification is my personal narrative. We have to move beyond the pledge and bring the fight against sexism into the debate round itself. I put the last semester of my debate career into this fight, motivated by my own personal experiences. Third is that critiques come first. You can't compare their fiat and fairy tale impacts on my real world issue. We have to have a fair community before we can move on to fair debate rounds. Otherwise, there are barriers that prevent access from playing on an even level playing field. And I would say that NDCA is uniquely important to me. So if I lose this round, I may never get to debate again, right? Everyone knows I was denied the at-large. This is my last chance to actually raise awareness to an issue that I really care about, an issue that we've all seen has made impacts in real life. So if I lose this round, then this movement will lose momentum, just like Avi's movement and Jalan's movement lost momentum in the past. And that means that these issues are going to continue. So, affirm.
5 minutes. Second off, case. Everybody? Jessica's 1AR was prepped against a different debater. I'm not saying that Jessica's voice doesn't matter. I'm not saying that sexism doesn't matter. I'm advocating and I'm advancing a counter-advocacy that solves 100% of her offense. We need to talk about sexism, but through the lens of the topic. The individuals in the debate community who have committed sexual assault, sexual harassment, and cyberbullying need to be punished and brought to justice. I'm telling you that Jessica's arguments belong in debate. I'm also telling you that she needs to discuss the topic. We can use topical debate as a way to break down assumptions debaters have already made. We can make topical debate better. She has conceded a lot of examples in which I have been breaking down assumption debate already. It doubles of last year's TUC debater from Dulles told me that morality is always in flux. I won in the Harvard round robin. Richard Schmickler said that impacts factor racism didn't matter. I won in Optics at TFA State. Stephen Sykes told me that rape didn't matter. I won. I've been reading an app about race for the entirety of the topic, and I have been challenging colorblind assumptions that many debaters and judges don't know they even have. Every time someone tries to impact my argument, tries to say my argument doesn't matter, it's an opportunity for me to fight back against the community and prove why their prejudices need to go away. If she doesn't understand that she doesn't get to weigh her discourse because my counter-advocacy co-ops all of that. She has conceded that all of her arguments fit into the frame of the resolution. The NDCA I read and the 1NC was a very good example of how we can discuss these issues in the debate community through the lens of the resolution. Those individuals need to be punished. Also, my counter-advocacy is net beneficial because we have to connect our personal advocacies to the public sphere in order to widen our perspectives and make us better on the societal level. That's a Giroux evidence that says that if we're going to have discourse about the problems in the debate community, we have to become learned about democratic institutions. We have to know how to pass legislation. We have to debate the pros and cons of things, and people have to be prepared to do that. We can't just say, oh, we agreed that sexism is bad, now vote for me, discussion over. We actually have to have that discussion and develop the advocacy skills in order to do that. She says that we can't wait to develop our advocacy skills. I'm not saying that you have to wait to develop your advocacy skills. You debate, do those at the same time. You advance your position in the debate round, then you use the debate round as a way to both advance the position and develop your own individual advocacy skills. Also, the Schneider-Schur evidence is a very good uniqueness card of this question. It says that youth are becoming disillusioned with the public sphere, democratic institutions, which is why we need debate as a forum for young people to learn how to become advocates for what they care about. If I had not done debate, I would not have been as successful in promoting debaters against sexism because I wouldn't have learned the critical thinking skills or the research skills I needed in order to make that happen. I'm not waiting to develop advocacy skills. I'm developing my advocacy skills right now, and I'm also causing out-of-ground change, and I'm also talking about the topic. Counter-advocacy subsumes the entire act, but she's also mishandling a lot of dissonance to her methodology. So go to the first one. Her model makes it literally impossible for us to be in solidarity with each other. Using the competitive debate format to generate change does not generate the necessary coalitions. She completely mishandled this in the 1AR. She just said that it's empirically denied that judges are more likely to intervene, and it's very likely that they'll vote on the flow. I don't understand how this answers my argument. My argument is that my unique social and political position means that if you vote against me, you harm my movement. You delegitimize my career. Instead of wanting all women to succeed, the methodology she has chosen forces you to pick one of us over the other. That has nothing to do with whether or not the judges are more likely to vote on the flow. Look, in her world, there's not a perm. In her world, there's always a trump card. This turns debate into the oppression Olympics, forcing the judge to choose between us. Both of us who are proponents for this movement makes you ask the question, who's fighting sexism better? We should not be debating who's doing more. Forced choice means that no matter what the judge does, it delegitimizes one of our movements. In round 5 of this tournament, a debater asked her why he couldn't just agree with her position. She said it was because she was the advocate in LD, but she's not the advocate. It should never be about who the advocate is. It should be about coming together in solidarity. Look, she is either or. I am and. This is an advantage to my counter-advocacy because if we come together and if we debate the topic, there's no forced choice between my movement and Jessica's movement. It's about two women competing on the terms they wanted all along. This is the only way to fix sexism is if we come together, not compete against each other. But also, she's completely mishandling the intersectionality disadvantage. She just says that she's an advocate for this out of round. But she's not answering that sexism is pretty bad in debate, but we are still uniquely privileged, and she's ignoring poor colored women, she's ignoring incarcerated women, she's ignoring the women who are shackled to their beds while giving birth in prison, who are denied visiting rights, who are losing their children to foster care. She's also conceded the Yuval and Davis evidence is pretty phenomenal on the point that we can't just talk about sexism in a vacuum. We have to consider patriarchy in context because of the limited perspective is methodologically unsound because she runs the risk of becoming that feminist who says that I am the authentic voice of women, I'm going to represent everyone, but unless she's willing to engage with the discussion of other debaters, to engage the criminal justice system, to engage social disadvantage going on in other parts of the world, she's never going to break down sexism. Only the topic is a starting point to do that. Only I am widening your perspective. Jessica says she doesn't even care about researching the criminal justice system or engaging with the position of others. I find this problematic. Under her methodology, it's literally just me. If we want to cause any social change, we can't talk about just you. Last argument in the 1AR is that if she loses the round, this movement stops getting momentum. I disagree with this. I promise you, I'm not going to cause it to lose momentum. I'm meeting with the TOC committee, I'm meeting with Scott One, and I'm going to pass legislation through the NFL. I'm still going to do work for debaters against sexism. I update its Facebook page like literally every day. This is empirical proof that this movement is not going to lose momentum. But if Rebecca Kuang lost in octaves of NDCA because she was told that debate is sexist, something that I've known for the entire year, that delegitimizes my career and is a huge, embarrassing blow to debaters against sexism. It's very simple. All of her offense is about why you have to live to her story. She has conceded that it is possible to talk about through the lens of the topic, winning many dissents to her methodology. We need to be more inclusive. You have to listen to my voice too.
NC and back BC, and I'm gonna go pretty slow. Fairly slow, probably a lot slower than I went today for most of the day. Are we ready? Rebecca prime example of a person who genuinely cares a lot about an issue but still somehow feels the need to censor the way I go about solving this issue. This is silencing, and this is bad for several reasons. First, on the issue of respecting victims' rights, as I've said, I'm a victim of sexual harassment, and if we're trying to respect their rights, we should at least let them speak out, right? But Rebecca's saying that I should confine my speaking out about sexual harassment within the confines of this topic, and now I misspoke during my last speech saying that I don't care about researching about the criminal justice system. Obviously, I do care, but what I'm trying to say is that I care about real impacts. The fact of the matter is, if I talk about other people's issues of sexism, if I talk about women who are shackled in prison, that doesn't do anything. Your ballots aren't going to go to the U.S. federal government to change your legislation. We are not legislators. However, my talking about my own personal experiences and what I want to see change the debate community, more open discourse, introducing more forms of argumentation that should be taken legitimately, that introduces real impacts. And you guys have all seen how these real impacts happened. I'm the reason that this whole discussion was recently spurred. Okay, Rebecca and Mr. Timmons both told me personally that the pledge was inspired by my performance at Columbia. And let's talk about how it's not just about me, right? I find this argument kind of offensive because she's saying that you're saying it's all about you, but you're not listening to me. That's not what it is at all. She says that it's bad to assume that I'm the advocate, but unfortunately, as sad as the truth is, I feel like this is the truth. I am the advocate. I'm the advocate. This is the reason that all of you guys are here watching my round. If I wasn't the advocate, if I wasn't an advocate, if I wasn't known for writing multiple arguments, then probably none of you guys would be here, or there'd be a lot fewer of you guys here to watch Rebecca. So yeah, I am the advocate because no one else has stepped up to talk about this inside of rounds. So let's talk about why it's most important to talk about it inside of rounds. I'm showing you that I'm the fastest link. When I asked Rebecca what happens when she called out Richard Schmickler in the final round of the Harvard round robin, she said that she changed the views of two people who had these views about racism that they didn't know about. And that she developed the advocacy skills to start debates against sexism. I'm saying that I'm being an advocate right now. I'm outweighing on the time frame and the predictability. I'm not waiting for advocacy skills to develop so that I can go many years into the future and start actual legislation about it. I'm doing it right now, and I'm affecting more people. As you can see in all of my outrounds, there have been a great number of people watching me. At Harvard, there were so many people in the room, it was practically a fire hazard. And so that's the reason why inbound discourse is so important. It's because it forces people to listen. And you guys all know it's important, otherwise you guys wouldn't be here. So let's talk about why I should win. It's because I'm having the real world impact. Her counter-advocacy isn't going to work because it doesn't have real world impact. You can extend Olson, which says that if the silence continues, then this behavior continues.
Congratulations to both debaters for what I'm sure was a very emotional round. It is a 3-0 decision for the negative from Greenhill. I will go first because I have to run really quickly. I'll boil it down to this simple view. I am one of the more sympathetic judges to a micropolitical position in the pool, I'm sure, and out there. I've inflicted this on debate myself a couple of times over various issues. I don't think you handle well Rebecca's arguments that topical debate is a better vehicle. I think I can best characterize it as Rebecca's saying, by going within the topic, you can reach people in a way that confrontational sort of narratives don't, right? So if you basically slip the message within a topical debate, you're going to actually change their minds without the resistance that happens. So the people who, it's a way to teach people about sexism without implicitly, at least in their minds, calling them sexist, and therefore they learn more about it, is basically the way I could recast what she was saying. I don't think you ever really answer it on that level, on the flow, and in my heart, as a debate coach, that's at least equally compelling to what you're saying. And so, either way, that turns into a ballot for her. Because I think what she is essentially saying is that by saying SCEP is crap and all of this stuff is crap in the context of rounds about race, in the context of towns about women, that reaches more people, because people are willing to take that as a unit and think about it. And that actually does have an immediate impact that can be measured. And that's going to be compelling to an educator no matter what, because that's what we're doing here and that's why we're here. So as far as the heartstrings framework and the heartstrings role of the ballot, I give that at least equal weight do I give it to your cause. And on the flow, I think that was clearly coming through. So that is an easier way to vote. I hope you stay in debate. I hope this is not your last debate round, and I hope that you aren't you don't leave the community. So I really hope that I see you next year. and that I see you at camps and things like that. Because I do think that these things need to be said, and I think all Rebecca is saying is she has come up with a better way to say them, and that you didn't answer them at all. And you didn't answer that as effectively as you could have. And so that is why I voted. Does that make sense? So I must flee. So.
So my decision is very similar in terms of the argument that I think I feel most comfortable voting on, that being that discussion of the topic and talking about the impacts that you think are important, you both think are important, would be the best way to actually solve for those impacts, instead of just talking about your personal narrative. I think one of the strong arguments you are going for in the 2AR is the argument that she is, trying to censor the way that you're trying to make the argument. The problem is that I don't, in fact, think she's actually trying to censor the discussion that you're trying to have. I think she's just trying to essentially, frame that discussion in a particular way so that we can talk about the impacts you want, right? Because I don't think your argument is we should, the heart of your argument is not we should talk about me because or talk about you because you're important. Your argument is that what has happened to you and the experiences, the things that you've experienced, and that sexism is bad. And she's not censoring that we shouldn't talk about sexism. She's saying we should talk about it through a particular lens. So I don't think that it's particularly censoring. It's not censorship in the way that you make it out to be. I also think that because you don't go for the arguments about why the personal narrative is important for having for having activism and political discussion, I think those arguments would have helped you in terms of making the argument that your specific discussion is important for activism. But since you don't go for those arguments in the 2AR, since you are fairly time pressed, I think that puts you in a bit of a disadvantaged position. As per the weighing arguments about you're the fastest link to change, I think that's predicated on the idea of her argument being that advocacy skills will lead to some sort of change in the future, but her argument is that there's actual change when we have topical discussions via the various examples that she gives about how she's able to change views in that respect. And I think you can make responses to this argument. For instance, I personally don't think that Schmickler is going to change his views about debate because she wins a debate, on her AC, for example. If I ever beat people and said, util is true, no one ever thought util was true, even though people voted for me, right? So I think that you can make responses to this type of argument, but not doing so makes it pretty difficult to vote for you. Specifically, I think most importantly, because you're not going for the narrative key arguments, which is, right, the crux of the performance, essentially.
I agree with what both judges said about it. I think that the negative is winning on the flow in a few different ways. But I do think that this round was a very emotionally heavy round for debaters, but also for me as well. I think that I agree very much with you, Jessica, that the personal narrative is important, so I'm going to waste everybody's time on my personal narrative. When I was 15 years old, I was a criminal, I was failing out of school, and my life, I didn't feel like I had any future at all. And my mom forced me to join the debate team because she wanted me to fight with somebody else after school for a few hours and give her a little credit. I joined the team, and I started caring about things like human rights, like sexism, like racism, like homophobia, like poverty and healthcare, and all the problems in this world. And I think that that is what debate teaches us. It teaches us that these things are important, and it teaches us how to be an advocate for these people that are not privileged in the way that we are, and these people that are suffering. And that's why I became a lawyer. That's why I work as a public defender. That's why I try in everything I do in life to help people as much as I can. And that's also why I became a debate coach. Because these things matter, and this is how you learn about them, and this is how we learn about them in the best way. I think both of you guys are making very compelling arguments for why debate is important and why it matters. And I really hope, I pray that you both continue to be an advocate for these changes, that you continue to inspire other people. I felt inspired in this round, that this is why I do debate. If I can teach one kid to care about rights, to care about helping other people, to realize that there are impacts outside of debate that are more important than winning a debate round, that if we can make changes in the real world and make it a better place than what we left it, that's what's important. I think that's what debate is all about. So I found both the speeches very compelling. I hope that you both continue to fight for change. You're both clearly strong advocates. And don't forget what debate has taught you and what you've learned from debate and how you can bring that to the next generation of kids and the next generation of people, that this is important and that what we do is important.